Roll the bones? No, we're not talking about gambling or throwing dice here on Smokey Dave Presents, or prognosticating the future with animal bones. Nor are we talking about the 1991 album by the greatest rock and roll band to ever play music. No, today we're talking about using our old chicken bones to make something so very useful and delicious. So stay tuned. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the last Smokey Dave Presents for 2022. It's Christmas time, and so thought we'd finish this one off with a little something that will warm the tummy. A little Smokey Dave's Chicken Bone Broth today. Now, in order to make bone broth, obviously you have to have some bones. And now everyone uses chicken, or practically everyone uses chicken a lot. And so most of us have a large collection of bones, or we would if we saved them. We typically throw them out. But once you find out what you can do with chicken bones and with the broth that you can make from it, you might think twice about doing that. Of course, you got to have a little space. So the way I do it is I typically save it in gallon freezer bags. And so in order to do that, it does help to have some freezer space. But because of all of the many different things you can make, such as soups, stews, gumbos, casseroles, or just drinking it straight, and because of all the health benefits that it has, it's definitely something you probably should give a second thought to. So, without further ado, let's get started. What you see here, of course, is 4.5 bags of chicken bones that I've collected over the last several weeks. And I keep them in a just standard freezer bag. And these are chicken wings, rotisserie chickens that I gotten from the big box, Sam's, Costco, BJ's, that kind of place. You can get those at grocery stores and whatnot. And not too nice to look at, but the reason I got them out here is because I'm going to step it up a notch. We're going to take these out to the smoker. We're going to smoke these bones before we turn them into broth. So I'm going to be putting these bones, these almost 5 gallons worth of bones, on a single rack on the bottom of the smoker today. I'm going to be processing a lot of cheese for the holidays, so I can't afford to use more than one rack for these. But I managed to get them all in there, and we'll let them smoke for about 2 hours, and they should take on some good flavor. Two hours later. All right, well, 2 hours have gone by, and it's time to get the bones out, and I'm just going to put them right into the stock pot we're going to use. So let's get them out there, and I'll meet you back up in the kitchen. So I'm up here in the kitchen. This is a 23-quart stainless steel stock pot full of bones now. And I'm going to add some additional vegetable pulp, and that's some greens, carrots, some celery, some tomato pulp. Going to add that all for color. I'm going to throw an onion in there too. Now I quartered the onion. I didn't really need to cut the ends off because everything in this is going to get filtered out. But this will add some additional flavor and color to our broth. Then we'll get it filled up with some filtered water about an inch and a half below the top of the edge there. And we'll get it on the stove. All right, we got the stock pot up on the stove, and now we have to bring it to a simmering low boil for anywhere between 8 and 12 hours. I usually shoot for around 10. You don't want to go too much longer than that with chicken bones. They will start to break down and you'll get some off flavors. Now with beef bones, you have to go at least 24 and as long as 48 hours in order to get the flavor out of those. I don't do that too often, but chicken just fills the whole house with a wonderful smell. Well, I'm not showing the next part where I filter all the bones out after the 10 hours. It was a very difficult shot to make, so I'm just going to have you imagine it. So basically what I did is I just got one of these basic colander, used for spaghetti or whatever. And I set this in a smaller stock pot, which you'll see here in a minute. And I poured basically poured all the juice in that, and this captured all the bones and chunks and bits. Now, this is, we're going to strain it again because, of course, a lot of little bits will go through these little holes. But we just want to get the main stuff out so we can get down to mainly liquid and just deal with the liquid. So that's what I did there, and let's move back into the kitchen. So here's our broth, and it's been sitting overnight in the refrigerator after we strained it. And that has allowed the fat to float up to the top. Now we want to get all that fat off. That isn't something we want to have in our broth, or very little of it if we can manage. That has some off flavors and things like that we want to get out. Underneath, you'll notice the gelatinous broth because it's cold. And that's going to be the smooth, delicious broth we want. So we'll scrape all that fat off. And once we get that done, then we'll reheat this up to boiling and start canning it. I've got 1.5 pints jars here ready, and I've brought the broth back up to a low boil. There in my hand is an extremely fine sieve that will pull out all the little bits of vegetable material and remaining chicken bits and anything else that's in there. Before I do that, though, I'm going to use my scoop to scoop out any remaining little bit of fat that have come up to the surface there, just to get that out so that we can have a nice clean broth. Now, I wanted to mention something. If you have a garden, those bones that you strained out earlier, don't throw those out. Those are perfect for composting and will add additional calcium and some phosphorus to your soil. Something to think about. That means you got 3 uses out of those bones. All right, so we're going to start pouring the broth in. Now, something I want to be very clear about, I'm not making this shelf stable. For one thing, this broth doesn't last long enough with my family members around, but you can. If you want to make this shelf stable, though, you're going to have to pressure can it. You're going to have to bring it up to 15 pounds for about, 15 to 30 minutes. Probably 30 minutes would be better. It's already going to be hot from being boiled, but again, we want to have a good pressure can if you're going to keep it on the shelf unrefrigerated. These are going to all go into my refrigerator or into my freezer. So I'll leave a good inch of space at the top of each one for expansion. And I've frozen these many, many times before. It works out perfectly if you have freezer space again. And then we're just going to use the scoop and the sieve and the funnel there, the canning funnel, and we'll fill these up. Well, you can see that I'm filtering out quite a bit of vegetable matter here, which I'll show you here in a minute. But yeah, there it is. And when I was all done, I ended up having a full 9.5 pints jars full of broth when I was done. Even had a little extra afterwards, but yeah, it makes a decent amount from almost 5 gallons of bones. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this last episode of Smokey Dave for 2022. And I hope you enjoyed the process of making bone broth. Now, we've got some upcoming videos that will use some of this bone broth. I've got a smoky, savory squash soup coming. And we're going to do some real Cajun gumbo. The problem, of course, right now is getting good, fresh okra. Now, some people will say, well, you don't need to put okra in your gumbo. If you made gumbo and you didn't put okra in it, you just made stew. I'm sorry. Gumbo has to have okra in it. And we're going to make some smoky, savory gumbo. But again, that may be a little later in the year of 2023. Anyway, everyone, I hope you had a great 2022, and I hope you have an even better 2023. If you liked what you saw here today, would you consider hitting that like button and possibly subscribing? I always put the links to some of the equipment I use, such as that 23-quart stainless steel pot, down below. So if you are interested in buying something like that, would you consider hitting that button? Hitting that link, it helps the channel and helps the channel grow and helps me get better at what I'm doing here. So again, I wanted to thank you all for this year, this first year of Smokey Dave Presents, and I hope next year we'll do a whole bunch of new things that will make your tummy full and your heart happy. And remember, folks, it's no joke. Everything is better with smoke.